those, and I saw Brother Sam, and I didn't even study it out to find out what the guy was proving, but he was put on the screen. He's lying. He's lying. It made me a little upset, and that's because I don't know you all as well as I know myself, but I know that I would never lie on this camera about Jesus or even about Muhammad. And if there's something about Islam that I don't have perfect knowledge of from the Islamic sources, and you and Sam are the same way, you will say, look, this is what some sources say. We acknowledge that these hadith, for example, are not strong, you know. And so when they accuse us of lying, viewers, be very careful. We may be mistaken. If we're mistaken, call us, correct us, email us, Jesus or Mohammad at abnsat.com, or also news and views at abnsat.com. We will recant. We'll change if we're wrong. But that's very seldom that's going to take place.
I don't know which. Maybe you've watched some higher quality YouTube videos than I have. Everyone that I've watched that has been critical of us has been total nonsense and total misrepresentation.
I don't believe that they were right.
we have topics scheduled for this weekend. It might be a good idea, and it might be fun to maybe one of those days, maybe on Sunday, play some of those YouTube videos that Muslims are trying to respond to us, play what the Muslims are saying, and see how it stands up to what their own books say.
I think that's an excellent idea. We should do that. Yeah. We should do that one show.
We're gonna take a day on Sunday. We're gonna play some videos by Muslims in response to this show, and we'll see how we'll see who's lying. Put it that way.
Very good, very good. Well, David, are you prepared to present your case then before we go to our first break and go to our callers? Remember, this is a live talk show. We're going to 248-416-1300. After the first break here, another quarter of an hour, we'll begin to take your calls. I know there's at least one waiting on line right now. Do be patient with us. Brother David, you want to present your case concerning Jesus, concerning Muhammad and his view of the universe?
All right. Well, we'll go through some passages, and we'll, we can unpack things as the show proceeds. Although we'll probably end up talking about violence in Islam again. This is one of the main concerns in the world right now. But on our last program, we got through a few passages. We looked at Surah 68:1, which begins with the word nun, which can be translated in various ways, but which Muhammad's companion said referred to the giant fish or the giant whale that sits below the seven earths. So that we also looked at Surah 65:12, which says that Allah created 7 heavens and 7 earths. We looked at Muslim commentaries on these passages, which say, in effect, that there are 7 earths, one stacked up on top of another. They're all flat earths, and there's a 500-year gap between each of them. So one earth, 500-year gap, another flat earth, and so on until you get to the top earth. All of these 7 earths, 7 flat earths, are stacked on the back of a giant whale. And sometimes that whale gets annoyed and agitated and he wriggles around. That's where earthquakes come from, my friends. This is not according to me. This is according to your Muslim sources and to your early commentators. And by the way, that's why mountains, according to the Quran, that's why mountains are placed in the earth. The mountains drive down like tent pegs to keep the earth steady when that giant fish goes a-wriggling.
And so I guess like Old Faithful, that's a little hole, the spout hole of the whale when the water shoots out, right?
Could be.
Geyser. Yeah. That makes sense.
So we looked at some passages from the Quran which say that the earth and all the earths actually are flat.
Now that's in the Quran.
That's in the Quran.
Now what was our verse? We got 68:1 talking about the fish. Do you have the reference on the flat earth?
65:12 refers to the 7 earths, and when you compare this with the Hadith, for instance, Jami at-Tirmidhi, which explains what these 7 earths are. They're actually 7 separate earths. Don't let Muslims deceive you into believing that they're layers of the earth's crust or something like that. That's absolute nonsense, given what Muhammad himself said. Muhammad is, according to Muslims, Muhammad is the greatest interpreter of the Quran. Muhammad said it refers to 7 separate earths. That's what he said. If you want to go against him, fine, but don't tell me he's a prophet when he's wrong about all these things. So we looked at a couple passages. We looked at Surah 20:53. We looked at 71:19. Which say that the earth has been spread out like a carpet. But most importantly, and I'll read it to you, we looked at passage Surah 88, verses 17 through 20 of the Quran. And I'll read them to you. Do they never reflect on the camels and how they were created, the heaven how it was raised on high, the mountains, how they were set down, the earth, how it was made flat. Now, just briefly again, we looked at Tafsir al-Jalalain. We'll look at Jalalain one more time in case you missed the last program, and then we'll go to Ibn Abbas. This is not me saying this. This is some of the greatest commentators of all time, and in the case of Ibn Abbas, one of Muhammad's companions and the founder of Quranic studies. If you think you know more about what the Quran says than these men, please call us and tell us where you got your outstanding wisdom. Tafsir al-Jalalain, he says, as for his words, sutihat, laid out flat, this on a literal reading suggests that the earth is flat, which is the opinion of most of the scholars of the revealed law, and not a sphere, as astronomers have it, even if this latter does not contradict any of the pillars of the law. So you have Jalal, one of the greatest commentators, Quranic commentators of all time, and he says that experts in the Quran, experts in the revealed law, believe that the earth is flat because that's what the Quran says. And he says, unlike the view of the astronomers who believe that the earth is a sphere. Now, think about this, because this is very, 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 very important. Here you had a situation in history where it couldn't be proved conclusively either way what the earth is, and you had astronomers, based on their measurements and their observations, saying that the earth was a sphere, and you had teachers of the Quran and Quran experts saying, no, don't listen to the astronomers, the earth is flat, that's what the Quran tells us it is. So here, Muslims tell us all the time the Quran is a scientific masterpiece, believe what the Quran says because it's confirmed by science. You have situations in history where Muslims totally contradicted science, not because they had mistaken views about what the Quran said, but because they believed what the Quran said. And this kept them, it held them back from understanding the true nature of the universe. So that's Tafsir Jalalain. And Tafsir of Ibn Abbas, Allah it is who created 7 heavens, and he says, one above the other like a dome, and of the earth the like thereof. And Ibn Abbas comments, 7 earths, but they are flat. So all 7 earths are flat. You have 7 earths stacked up like pancakes. So what we have so far, just from examining a couple passages along with the commentaries, is giant fish, 7 earths stacked up flat like pancakes. That's what we're getting so far. And really, we're just touching the beginning of Muhammad's teachings about the structure of the universe. Go to the Quran, chapter 36, verses 38 through 40, and read with me. Chapter 36, verses 38 through 40. And the sun runs its course for a period determined for it. That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. And the moon we have measured for it mansions to traverse, till it returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. It is not permitted to the sun to catch up the moon, nor can the night outstrip the day. Each just swims along in its own orbit according to law. So what picture do we get here of the motion of the sun and the moon? Well, they each have their orbits, and they're kind of chasing each other, but they can never catch each other. So you have the earth, you have the sun and the moon chasing each other in their orbit around the earth. They can never quite catch each other. Is this accurate? Is this an accurate picture of the movement of the sun and the moon? Not at all. Not at all. Not one bit. The sun is a long way away from the moon, and they can never catch up to each other because they're really far apart, and they're not chasing each other around the earth. It's the earth going around the sun and the moon going around the earth. But the author of the Quran obviously did not know this. Now, so you've got the sun, and it's going around the earth. Well, what happens to the sun? Because obviously, you know, there's light and then there's dark. What happens? Where does the sun go? Fortunately, we find out in the Quran. There's a famous passage in the Quran